I mean, he's like, Stellar Adler. He's the master class of how you approach comics. This is a true art form.
It would weigh on us the way it would be perceived, but I always had this sense of like, oh, I'm making a legend right now.
Oh, I'm so hyped for that, right? Oh. We have a great panel with us tonight. Fantastic. The one, the only Mark Waid, the writer of Kingdom Come, as well as a human DC Comics database. Sal Abbinanti, right over there, Alex Ross's art dealer, a comic creator in his own rights, and he has also the producer of the Kingdom Come documentary. Right here we have Remsy Atassi. He is the director and editor of the film that you are all going to love so much. And on the end here, we have the wonderful Julie Benson and Shawna Benson. You may know their work from the CW, from Netflix, from all sorts of streaming platforms, and from comics as well, because they do it all.
Thank you.
So, I'm really excited. I'm Mike Rowe. I'm an editor with The Wrap, and I am just, as a kid who grew up, got into comics because of Mr. Mark Waid's work. Wow. I'm so excited to be here for this panel. Just to sort of kick things off, Mark, I know that with Kingdom Come, you are credited as the writer and Alex Ross is the artist. But Alex was so intimately involved in this story.
Oh yeah.
He pitched it as like a 40-page handwritten thing that he put together. What can you sort of share with us about that original inspiration for Kingdom Come, both from Alex and how you sort of worked together scripting that?
Sure. And everybody sort of marvels by Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross. Yes. Okay.
Yep.
So that did really well, obviously. And Alex, a DC boy, came over to DC and had. Like you said, a package of stuff. It was mostly sketches and a few ideas. A lot of them were characters that he had created when he was a kid. A lot of them were really interesting sketches and takes on Superman and Batman. And he had very broad strokes, that it's the future, that Superman is retired, that younger heroes have come to take their place. It's going badly. And he came to DC and said, look, I need somebody who knows the DC universe inside and out, who knows these characters better than anyone. And without hesitation, of course, they said Mark Waid. So, because he can only name 38 states, but he can tell you everyone on the Kryptonian Science Council.
I'd like to hear that.
I didn't know that was a requirement.
I mean,
okay.
So we went out to lunch. It was editor Dan Raspler, who ended up taking on the series. It was me and Alex going out to lunch, and I had not met Alex before. We had a good conversation, and he was telling me about what he was looking for and the broad strokes of the story, and I was having a hard time finding my way in. Like, what is it about? I mean, it was all good, but I had to find my way in so I could join in on the fun. And as I'm sitting, I tend to think visually, and as I'm sitting there, I just had the vision of the last couple of pages of Superman finally putting his Clark Kent glasses back on for the first time, and reclaiming his humanity. And in that moment, I thought, okay, I'm in. I think I got something here. And so from there, Alex and I just had a lot of long conversations. I went to Chicago and spent a long weekend. We sat around his apartment and knocked around a bunch of ideas, and went to scripting phase. And the joy of seeing Alex's pencils faxed in, yes, that's how long ago it was, rolling across my fax machine every day was just a joy.
It always blows my mind that Alex was so young when he did this work. He was in his 20s, which makes me feel like a complete failure at my age, but he'd already done Marvels, and then, he's like 25 working on Kingdom Come, I was sort of curious, what is it that you think about this art he did at such a young age remains so impactful? This is really for the panel, anyone who sort of like how do you feel that, what's made this last and inspire each of you?
I was kind of invited to the party accidentally with Alex because we had this Thursday night group of guys that hung out. They were local Chicago comic artists, and I was trying to break into the business, and it just wasn't working out, so we all went together, and then we all got together and we would talk and hash it out. And then Alex had already kind of really made it with Marvels at that point, and Casey was, I'm trying to sound cool, I call it Casey, it's Kingdom Come. And then one night we were at the bar and we're playing pool, and him and a couple of guys, they were staring at me kind of weird. And then I was like, what's wrong with these guys? And then, I thought, and then Alex came over to me and he's like, hey, have you ever heard of Captain Marvel? And I said, with the guy with the cape, the short cape, the Elvis Presley thing going on? And I said, he goes, yeah. And he goes, I want to use you as Captain Marvel. And I said, you're out of your mind. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I had no idea how Alex worked. He took photo reference of characters. He saw all of different friends of ours as different characters. So he immediately says, hey, he comes back a week later with a costume that he wants me to put on. And I mean, this was not even the costume you buy at Walgreens, for Halloween. It was bad. It was real bad. So I thought he was a nut. I thought they were making stag films at his apartment or something. So he gives it to me. It's 14 sizes too small. He borrowed it, I think, from Paul Dini, who, him and Alex were kindred spirits. So, but then I went to his apartment, which was literally just a table and a couch. You remember, Mark?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he lived like Shawshank Redemption in his apartment.
Yeah.
So I put it on. But then when I started to see the layouts, these tremendously detailed layouts, and the storytelling and how it moved, and the lighting, and down to the folds of the material. And we started taking pictures, and he was almost like directing it like a film. I said, all right, this guy is, and we weren't, close friends at that point. And I said, this is different. This guy is like the real deal, because I'd already seen Marvels, but what he was doing with Kingdom Come with Mark was a whole nother level. Now, I still didn't care much about Captain Marvel, but I was just like, I'll help. I said, whatever I got to do to help.
Well, Sal may actually be immortalized as Captain Marvel. He was the Wikipedia of Captain Marvel until the Shazam movie. I think
right.
the likeness of Alex's thing. But we talked to I think over 30 people when we were doing this interviews and such, talking about the book and the history of it, and going back into the archives. I mean, we found all the sketches, the pencils, the thumbnails, the layouts, all that stuff, and captured thousands of images and reference photos and stuff from the time. So it was really interesting to see where his process was there, and then even you saw on there all the stuff with him as a kid. So much of it, and he was known for Marvels, but now, and I mean, I guess you're both the Superman guys, but that's Superman. I think that's the connection that all the people that we spoke to, and with Alex, it's this kind of as a hero, as a character, as a sort of myth that runs all the way back in American culture. I think the doc talks a lot about that. We kind of explore that because that's a big reference point for Alex and a reference point for pretty much all of his work, and obviously that's really important to you too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we can speak to it as writers, and I will say that Kingdom Come is very cinematic. There's a fluidity to the artwork that feels very cinematic. It feels bigger than the page in a way, the images kind of come off the page. I think that is one of the enduring legacies of that book, is that you can look at it many times, and each time you're going to see something different. And that is really special. There aren't a whole lot of comic artists doing, the inside page work that can do that. And they do feel real because he used real people. He cast it. If you cast a book with people, with image, with expressions and faces, and he's capturing all of that, then it feels that much more real as you read it.
Yeah, for me, I was in college when this came out, and I was raised reading my dad's Silver Age comics, our dads, and
Yeah, same dad.
This was the first time I think I had read a book that felt like serialized storytelling to me. And I was really excited to see where each arc went and following those characters through. I think that was the first time I really paid attention to the writing. So as much as I love the art, I want to thank Mark for writing something that was just really, really well done, and something that Shawna and I strive to this day to match and may never. But it's really, really well done, and you should get a lot of praise for it.
Thank you. Thank you. That's why you're on the panel. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was mentioning that Mark's work is what got me into comics. First time I looked at the writer of a comic was reading the Return of Barry Allen Flash story, and then I knew that when Kingdom Come was coming out, I had to get my hands on this. I was looking back at Kingdom Come, rereading it coming into today, and I was just struck at how timeless a story it is. We talked about Alex doing Marvelous beforehand. That's a very sort of nostalgic look back at what makes Marvel great.
Right.
But Kingdom Come is such a future-looking story. I was curious about what is that you think made that book so timeless, and maybe what it says about us that those themes are still there. Like, just one quote I wanted to read was, there's a line from Wesley Dodds where he says, sometimes he'd ambush complete strangers and ask them how much they missed the concept of human achievement. Wesley insisted that human initiative began to erode the day people asked the new breed to face the future for them. And with all the AI stuff happening now, and from that to immigration is part of this, and it's all right there.
You're right.
Yeah. What do you think makes it still with us?
I'm really not sure. I think that really it does what I always like to do, which is you start with the heart of the character. You can start with the villains, you can start with the big slam bang action, you can start with all that stuff if you want, and maybe you can make a good story out of it. But I feel like really it's all about the heart of the characters. And the hardest nut for me to crack in this story, I will always remember, is the idea that for the story to work, Superman has to have retired. And Alex and I went back and forth on that for like days, because I couldn't wrap my head around why in the world Superman, my favorite hero, would ever say, I quit, because he doesn't quit. And it wasn't until I pitched the idea of Magog to Alex, and the idea that there was a hero that's kind of the world we've sort of evolved into, that a world that embraces characters that kill versus characters that will not kill, and sees them as old-fashioned and out of step. And that's the one thing that can make Superman go, I have no place in this world. If you're embracing killers, I have no place in this world.
Yeah, it's such a morally complicated book, because it's Superman sort of endorses building a gulag for heroes they don't agree with. Then you have Batman, who's got his own version of fascism. And how do you sort of create such it feels like that the morals of the story are still very classic and true, but it's also nobody's really writing this. How do you sort of approach that when you were putting this together?
That's the best kind of story, where nobody is really completely right. And that's a hard juggling act to pull. I will say that I see Superman's fascism a lot more clear today than I did 30 years ago when I wrote the thing. But it's definitely an element there. But again, it's always done with the right idea, the right heart in mind. Superman is not going to screw up that badly. But those are the best kind of stories, the ones where this character has a motive, and this character has a motive, and this character has a motive, and they're not all coming together, and they're going to be in conflict with each other. So, Lex Luthor. So, he has Captain Marvel. That was a big part of it too, is trying to crack. I think that maybe my biggest contribution was trying to figure out how Captain Marvel could play a role in this story, because it wasn't really in Alex's original concept, although he loves that character. And so I realized that when I started putting it together and realizing that this is a story about humans versus superhumans, and we have the one character who is both Billy Batson and Captain Marvel, then you've got a fulcrum to rest that whole conflict on.
I think we're talking a little bit about what makes Kingdom Come still relevant, still something that could feel like it was written today. Feels like the art is very timeless, yet not of its age. But
Do you know why I'm having a hard time answering your question?
why is that?
Because I'm in the eye of the storm still. I actually don't have an answer to that question. I've been bluffing for the last 5 minutes. But I think that's something that is better judged by somebody other than Alex and I.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to ask the panel, like,
Yeah.
how Kingdom Come has, like, what you sort of felt when you first saw this book, when you first saw this art, and maybe influence it's had on you over the years.
I mean, I think the art is a huge component of it because Alex's work is singular, and I think when you see it, it's so striking. I think it is true, like you were saying. I mean, I can validate your point because I talked to all these people about it, which is that being able to, it's timeless because these characters, for those of us who love them, we all know those stories. And so it's putting them in a context where we understand them. It's putting them in the future in a world that feels like our world or the world of the future at the time. But it still feels very relevant today. And those characters, seeing them in the future, how they would be, was, I think, just like this kind of reflection. It was like something people intuited, but it's very cool and interesting, and it definitely seems to be a reference point with other folks that we've talked to, where the way that they see these classic Justice League characters, like Alex's depiction of them and the sort of storytelling behind them, is very relevant today. And it seems like a continuing inspiration from like the folks that we've talked to who are creators or people who continue to be involved in, you know, the DC and Marvel universes.
Well, maybe that's the answer then, because Alex's mission and my mission both, and my mission still to this day, every time I hit the keyboard, is to drill down on what is the essential classic version of this character.
You and Alex are both like that.
Exactly, yes. And so I think that came across in the book in a big way, except for the mullet. Other than that, the one note we had to take that we didn't want to take was the absolute insistence on DC's part that when Superman is shown back in the day of Magog, that he wear his hair in a mullet because he was wearing his hair in a mullet in the comics at the time. We all knew this was a terrible idea.
Well, mullets are back, though.
Mullets are back. Now would be a man bun. But I implore you, whenever you go back and reread this story, when you get to those panels, just mentally edit out the ponytail.
His fashion faux pas.
No, they're in again, Mark.
No.
It's
Okay.
fine.
All right.
I think, too, that at the time that Kingdom Come came out, there were a lot of comics that the interior art didn't really feel like it felt like it was being churned out in a way, right? That it was the factory. And this didn't feel like factory work. Like you could look at a panel and it could have been the cover. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes a huge difference. Obviously, it probably was insanely difficult for Alex. I have to imagine to make every panel look that great.
Yeah.
Has to have taken a lot of care and time. But I think that also made a huge difference in how people accepted it. And like you say in the movie, Sal, like it's an art form. And I think that it felt like art as opposed to some of the comics that didn't really, people knew it was art, but they're like, it's a comic book. What?
Right.
It's not a thing.
More of a assembly line sense.
Yeah.
Because Alex did 10 pages a month, rain or shine, winter, sun or snow, and that's what his speed was. And most comic book artists will do a page a day, but they also don't have to then paint them in gouache. The fact that Alex was able to do 10 pages a month at that speed is phenomenal as it is, but if you were cranking it out like a regular monthly comic book artist does, you never would have gotten that level of care and that level of detail. And DC was very good about saying, look, take what time you need to get this done. We want it to look good. We don't want it to look like it has to be done by Thursday.
Yeah.
Which is a luxury.
It's a real luxury.
That's something I remember when I read it, is that you could see the facial expressions on the characters. And so many times in comics, they were kind of just blobs, right? Like it was quick and dirty. And the dialogue was telling me what I was supposed to feel for that character, but I wasn't really seeing it. And this was the time that I was reading it and seeing it and feeling it. And so, yeah, it was a big deal.
It was rough for me. No, I won't lie for a minute. It came out, in the first couple issues, we were all, Alex's pals, and we were just everybody that I talked to and everybody on the lead up to it, from the promos, the pre-promos that DC did, were amazing. So there was this vibe before it came out, and we were all his friends, and I wasn't working with him yet. You know, we're working together now. You know, I'm his rap and business guy and all this, but I was just his friend. And then the first issue came out, and it was amazing. It was beautiful stuff with his dad and the Spectre. Mm. And then when it turns the corner, and you know, Captain Marvel showed up, they would harass me at shows. They would chase me with Kingdom Come. They would, you know, ask me what it's like to kick Superman's ass and all this stuff. And I said, guys, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, and then, you know, Dan Raspler from DC comes over to me and he goes, Sal, you know, you realize you're Captain? I go, no, Dan, it's just, I did a guy a favor 2 years ago.
Yeah, but nobody, really, other than Chris Reeve, I mean, nobody else had really seen those characters on the screen, and this was the closest thing you had to dynamic people.
I had the faucet collector people asking me to sign stuff. I must sign a dozen Kingdom Comes every day of my life when I'm at a show. And they'll ask me to sign.
I didn't know that it was his dad until the documentary.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. And the great thing about the doc is that we got his father, and his father passed away during the production of it, and he almost lived to be 100. He was literally like just short of 100. And we were able. I said, look, Alex, we really want to get your father, and he was private about it. But I said it's important because Norm Mackay is really the soul, the heart and soul of this. Yeah. But even though I was harassed, everybody knew that this was an amazing piece of work. And as his friend, he was chained to that table. I mean, he was working relentlessly on this thing. So I was cool with it because I knew because I was a huge comic fan my whole life. And I just knew from the jump. I'm like, no, this is a special piece of work, and I was proud of him as a friend. So that's why he continued to ask me for the next 20 years to pose as Captain Marvel, and I said, as long as you get a better costume.
The
photos, because and he's like, I'll get a better costume, because I said, you made a few dollars, so can we get a better costume? Something that I don't look like, Elton John when I'm taking pictures, and there's these horrible Polaroids of me floating around everywhere.
I've seen them; they're amazing.
So,
I'm always, been struck by Alex Ross. There's such a small number of interior pages that he's ever done because it's such painstaking work. He did Marvels, he did Kingdom Come, he's done a few oversized books and sort of revisited those stories, but it makes it feel that much more special. Plus, Alex hasn't given a lot of interviews even over the years talking about all of this. He doesn't do Comic-Con every year.
Alex is the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
In the sense that if you see him in the wild, it is a rare and beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yes. That's what I want to ask about the documentary. Just how was it, getting to talk through the work with Alex? Can you talk a little bit about those interviews and that process?
Yeah.
He was cool with it. It's his baby. It's still his baby. It's very important to him, and he wanted to be sure. So when Remsy and I, because Remsy and I have been working together doing, production work, interviewing Alex and creating content for years now, we create all this, singular content with different subject matters. But every time we would do anything related to Kingdom Come, the comment section, the like section, it was always through the roof. So I said, look, originally we were talking about making a documentary just about Alex, but then he was not great on that. He was not keen on that. So I said, all right, well, let's pivot and do it about Kingdom Come. And then he was like, okay. He goes, that I could see. And I don't think he really thought it was gonna eventually come together, but he was cool with it, and it worked out. And I felt it was important to do it about Kingdom Come.
Alex has a lot to say about it. I think that's the truth. I think he doesn't maybe make as many appearances. I mean, he's prolific in the sense that the art is very time intensive, and he's always in the studio working. So, we've been making. We would make content with Alex. I mean, we've been working with him together. For me, for a decade. For Sal, for so much longer than that. And every time we would be shooting stuff, I would be like, let's see if we can get a day where we could just get a little bit of stuff, we could set it aside and we can keep it for the doc. And we sort of started to build the foundation of Alex's story. And truthfully, we did shoehorn. It's a bit of the Alex Ross documentary, because we definitely did shoehorn a little bit of it in, where it's his personal story, and it's a story of its time. It's about Kingdom Come, also about that time period. I was going to say we were all talking about his work in that, but it's like it was in the 90s, so in a lot of ways was a reaction to the work that was going on there, and that's something we heard from a lot of people. But Alex is happy to talk about it, and it was with his dad being in it, with so many of the characters and heroes. I mean, there's sketches that he made when he was a teenager. It was like a pinnacle work for him, like a culmination of so many of the things that he wanted to say, and obviously that's why it connects with people, because it's got that personal touch. Yeah, you put your dad in the book. I mean, that's a very meaningful thing, and then now he's like the main character of the book. Everyone recognizes him, and you guys kind of brought a weirdly like a truth of his own father. Like he's a minister in the book. Like it's all real and very poignant. And then I mean, in the doc, it is cool because you see them like side by side, where it's like, yeah, it's the photos look just like almost it's like a one-to-one sometimes with the pages.
It's really unfair to see like age 8, and it's the best thing I've ever seen. And I can't draw a stick figure at age 8, and he's drawing Superman.
You
Anyway,
were drawing like potato heads as entire bodies, as I recall. With the
so
whole
unfair.
arms sticking out, but yeah.
talent.
Yeah, like Alex does so many covers and great work still, and I'm always it's always like, how did this come out of him?
Yeah.
I'll tell you how. Because he only takes the projects that he is really passionate about. He's not just going to do a Green Lantern cover because somebody throws money at him. He doesn't care. It's really got to be something that he is deeply passionate about and cares about. It's one of the things that bonded us very early on, is that we both are very, very passionate about these characters. And Alex, God bless him, even though I was about 10 years older than him, he was reading Golden Age and Silver Age comics as a kid that I had read as a kid. So in other words, he wasn't wrapped up in the comics of the 80s. He was wrapped up in the comics of the 60s and 70s like I was. And so we were both so incredibly passionate about these characters. We are the only two human beings in the world who can argue vehemently about Martian Manhunter for a half an hour. And we did. But that's okay.
I'd watch that documentary.
There was a lot of violent agreement in the making of this project.
Like Remsy was talking about, like this is a project where it was something where Alex is so passionate about all of this work. It's something that is so meaningful, and it's interesting to see the way that its legacy is not just in the original work, but also in the characters and the stories that came out of this. I know you've revisited this in your work over the years a number of times in World's Finest, and what sort of brought you back to this? Like, what do you think is so powerful that it keeps pulling so many writers, Jeff Johns, so many others, come back to this over and over? I
think they respond to the fact, like I said, these are characters in their purest forms, and I think there's just such power to what Alex's vision of Superman is, what Alex's vision of Batman is. We were talking about Kevin Conroy playing Bruce Wayne in the Crisis series that DC did on the CW with Flash and Green Arrow and so forth, and how Kevin Conroy was just perfect in that role. But people really responded to that because it's a Batman that will never give up. Like, it's a Batman who will go to his grave fighting, even if he has to wear an exoskeleton to keep his body together. This is the stuff that really people clued into, I think.
A question maybe for the panel. I know that there's also the Kingdom Come Superman logo is very much inspiring the new Superman logo for this new Superman movie coming out. How does it sort of feel to have that emblem, going to its biggest audience yet, and to, I know it got me excited deep down to think, like, how's Kingdom Come going to inspire this? What's happening here?
Look, I'm great with it. I mean,
yeah.
I thought the high point was always going to be Brandon Routh playing the Kingdom Come Superman in that Crisis, but this is even better. And I trust James Gunn 110%.
I'm sort of very curious also for the panel, and going into this documentary, I'm sure you all had to think a lot about Kingdom Come. What were sort of the things that went through your mind when you were putting together the documentary and wanted to make sure it came through in your own individual roles in this?
I from the jump, I told Remsy it has to be about the art. It has to be about the story. It has to be about everything down to the thumbnails of the notes on the script from Mark and him. And I was fortunate enough to be in on the ground floor of from soup to nuts. So I always felt that this was, one of the. And I told him this, and he got kind of, surprisingly, he stopped for a second, and he's like, "Really?" I said, "Alex, this is." I said, well, I want to do it about Kingdom Come because I think it's one of the most important graphic novels. There's 5 graphic novels. It's in the top 5 of graphic novels. And Alex is like, well, what number? And I said, well, I don't want to go back to the bar, so it's in the top 2, Alex, and I won't tell you if it's no, but I said, look, it's important. And so sometimes you have to step back from it. It was almost like Midnight in Paris, where while you're there, you don't even realize how great this stuff is and how important the role this is going to play in the comic world. But I kind of felt from the jump, I said, look, I don't know how the rest of the world feels about this, this project, but this is an incredible piece of work. So that's why with Remsy, I said, look, we have to, there has to be all the other trappings and put it together and have a narrative. But I said at the end of the day, the DNA of the project has to be showing the art and showing the story, and that's inevitably what the fan base wants, and so that's kind of we went from there backwards.
Filmmaking is it takes a long time. So, I think when we were starting it, Sal, no doubt, has been the driver and advocate of getting this to the finish line from the outset. I think when we were starting it, it was kind of, we knew we had to start with Alex and then with Mark. We were just talking, we did that 3 years ago. We were actually at San Diego and we were able to grab Mark and get his part for the film. And so it's just kind of, you keep ticking away at it until you feel like you're, 50% there. You're like, okay, now let's just push and let's get to the end.
And then COVID, we ran into COVID, so we had to shelf it during COVID.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it probably seems very odd for people when they see us in this documentary.
Yeah,
And
why are we
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
But to your question, Mike, I hadn't read this book since the 90s, right? So I was like, I don't know, was it 90s or 2000s? But anyway, it was pre-X-Men, right? Pre-X-Men, there was this, I don't know, malaise about superheroes. There just wasn't a huge amount of enthusiasm and it certainly wasn't mainstream yet. You have to think back now, pre-MCU and going back, and the DCU hadn't really solidified. You'd had some Superman movies, but they kind of petered out toward the end of the 80s. They tried again with Brandon Routh, and it just didn't quite take. And I think that also was a driver, in that it was something that stood out, where I don't think a lot of the other superhero books at that time were standing out. I can say I was personally not reading a lot of superhero comics at that time. I was very much into Star Trek comics and Quantum Leap comics in the 80s and whatever adaptations of TV stuff I had.
But then when we got Green Arrow, we did go back and look at it, and we realized that a lot of our storytelling came from Mark, whether he wants to believe it or not, in that you take these amazing characters and you throw them into the gray. Every character on the 100 was always given sort of what's the worst choice and what's the
bad choice and what's
bad
the worst choice.
Right. So it was it's something that we realized through the years that we had been doing anyway. And then most recently, I guess we can announce that we did season 2 on Caped Crusader, the new Bruce Timm animated series. It's awesome. You guys are gonna love it.
Very good.
It's noir, but it's taking those characters back to their original form. So still yet, we go back to this well and we look and try to learn and glean everything you guys did. So thank you.
I think there's a lot of stripping down and reevaluating, and every generation. I mean, you said it up the top, the AI and all of the sort of importance of human creativity and ingenuity and all of those things, like those are themes that we play with a lot in our work. And what does it make us? It doesn't make us obsolete to have AI and all of these things that are coming into the fore. And we don't think it does. Obviously, we're creatives. We think that it does not. But there are certainly ways that it can augment and it can help. But I think that the question still remains, and we debate it every time there's some new sort of evolution that happens.
I mean, like Remsy was saying, it was, a reaction to the time, but it's also something that's timeless. Like, it was a reaction to the 90s grim and gritty attitude to some extent, and the image explosion and all of that. But it's, like we said, it's all still relevant. I'm sure we could all talk about Kingdom Come all night. I would love to show you all some more of the documentary, though. We have a sneak peek of another clip from The Legend of Kingdom Come. We'd like to exclusively share this with all of you, so please take a look at the screen, sit back, and enjoy.
Mark and I, when we were initially united on this, when he was sort of drafted into the project, he took a trip out to stay in Chicago, and we spent about 2 days beating together an outline together that was really only loose at the start of it.
Lobbing the ball back and forth. To me, that's the fun part. Like, it's no fun to sit in a room by myself and hope I come up with an idea. The exciting thing is bouncing ideas back and forth and trying to one-up the other guy, right? And trying to escalate and trying to, in a playful way, sort of outdo. Oh, you got an idea, I got a better idea. I remember the specific moment when it clicked for me, which was Alex was talking about, in the end, he wants everything to go back to, Superman being Clark Kent again, and I had this mental image of Clark just taking a pair of glasses and putting them back on his face for the first time in the series. And in that moment, that was just one little image, but that was the moment where I thought, okay, I got it, I know what we're doing now. To be perfectly honest, I was really excited about the fact that I knew this was going to be something. And I really liked Alex's work. At first, it wasn't, oh boy, I got a million story ideas, and that's what I'm excited about, I'm going to dive in. It was more like, no, I think I'm on the beginning of something, I'm on the cusp of something that could be really great. And that's what got me all revved up. But as we started talking, as we started knocking ideas back and forth, I just became more and more excited about the possibilities of looking at the future of the DC universe.
I know it meant a lot to him to see that where we were going with this thing, he got a sense, an epiphany himself of like, there's going to be a lot of attention towards this, and there's going to be something of this that will be with us for years to come. So it would weigh on us the way it would be perceived for all time to come. But I always had this sense of like, oh, when people see this thing, they're gonna be reading it for years and years to come. So I had this, very self-absorbed sort of sense that like, oh, I'm making a legend right now.
I had never seen that type of artwork in a comic book before, and that was just amazing to me.
I know, sorry. I'm sorry you had to hear that anecdote twice, but
It's the real story.
Yeah, it's true.
Is that the Kickstarter QR code?
Yeah, there's going to be a Kickstarter. You want to go ahead and check that out. I'm very excited for that becoming this fall. We'd also love to hear questions from any of you right now. If you have questions you'd like to ask the panel, please come up to the microphones.
This is the Kickstarter QR code. You can join the list right here if you want to support it.
Yes, please sign up. You can pre-register right now. I'm pre-registered for this because I am so excited for this. So
I already signed up.
I'm ready. Hi.
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 My name is Tom, and I just wanted to thank Mark for coming back to DC and kind of doing everything he's doing right after him. My question was, what's your master plan to bring Alex back to DC?
oh man, I have tried everything short of just leaving a trail of breadcrumbs. There's maybe a cover someday if I'm lucky, but Next question, please. It would be lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good question.
Hi, everyone. Mark, you really was the best man for this job, as they say in the panel.
Thank you.
You really know very well the characters of DC and this disruptive future of each one. It's amazing. My question is, if you were going to rewrite right now Kingdom Come, what other character from DC would you use that you that don't use at the beginning, and what will happen to him?
That's a great question. What would happen to him is harder because that would require me thinking of a plot. But the characters that I think have come along in that time that I think would be interesting to explore in that context would be John Kent. I think the son of Superman is the first one that comes to mind.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Mark. Big fan.
Thank you.
Very big fan.
You can ask other people questions.
No,
I promise.
please.
It's not a-
No, they're all
This
his.
is the man right
Well, just seeing as you're the Superman expert, I was just thinking in a lot of superhero stories, there's what like the Spider-Verse movies refer to as canon events, stuff that does happen in that character's life.
Right.
If you were to write a biography for Superman, what would be some canon events that have to happen? Does John Kent always need to happen? Would it be like whatever happens to the Man of Tomorrow? Yeah.
First off, that if is cute because you think I haven't already in my head written a biography of Superman.
Yes, in your biography that you've written. Yes.
I like the Grant Morrison school of it all happened. You've just got to figure out a way to fit it in. But you know, the essential stuff. Honestly, that would be a dull answer because we all know the essential stuff there.
Except the mullet, right? We can excise the mullet.
The mullet never happened.
Yeah.
That one never happened.
I like the mullet.
It's a little time.
And no matter what incarnation of Superman or what medium he is in, he never killed anyone. He is not a murderer.
Classic.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For what it's worth, I started reading comics in the mullet era, so I actually like the mullet, and I didn't even mind the split. I get why they could have I could have dealt with like another couple of years of the two Supermans before they put them back together.
All right, fair enough.
But no, I much like you guys, I remember very clearly reading that for the first time and reading Kingdom Come for the first time and being just blown away in in high school, early college, and when it came out, and I'll never forget, of course, the ending scene with Superman just saying, I've always trusted you. I mean, that was amazing stuff. My question is just a little bit silly, maybe. I've always thought of Kingdom Come and Marvels, or Marvels and Kingdom Come as Pet Sounds and Sergeant Pepper. And I was wondering if you guys thought that was a fair comparison.
That sounds pretty. I like that comparison.
I love that comparison.
Really good comparison.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done.
I mean, it is remarkable. You guys were both very young when you did this.
How old were you, Mark?
You were a child.
I was just 31 maybe. So actually, I wasn't even 10 years younger than I was.
You were a baby.
Something like that. Yeah, I know. And now I get to go to my grave knowing I did the best thing I ever did when I was 31 years old.
Yep, it's all you got. I'm sure it's all in the tank.
Like Orson Welles.
Costanza. You're just like, I'm out.
Whatever.
But also, I hadn't had a whole lot of experience writing comics at that point. I mean, I'd written a bunch of Flash, but I'd also written a bunch of Impact comics that nobody cared about. So
I had a lot to say, though.
I had a lot to say, though. I had a lot of thoughts. Yes.
I have a question for any of you at the panel who has an answer. One of my favorite things about Kingdom Come is all of like the blink and you'll miss like panel-long cameos of different characters, some of which just in like brief little moments tell a whole story about where this character's life went in the time that's passed since like present DC. Like, the rogue, excuse me, I'm nervous. The rogues owning the bar or the super pets at the farm. I want to know from each of you, what one of your favorite cameos was and what thought.
Boy.
If anybody wants to take the favorite part, I have the story of.
Please do.
Please.
The basic rule of thumb is this: if it's in the script, if it's a character who's in the script, I put him in. If it's a character like Beppo the goddamn super monkey, who is in the background, Alex was just trying to get me in trouble with DC Brass by putting him in there. So the monkey showing up in the background, that's Alex, which is all awesome.
That's
but
amazing.
by and large, it was from the only way I could wrap my head around the story with a million characters in it was to decide it is not a story about infantry, it is a story about generals. So as far as the B and C list characters and the cameos, that was just all for Alex to do.
I always liked. He went crazy with it. We would go around town. We would shoot reference at different parts of town. He snuck Rorschach in there. He put.
He did?
Yeah. He put Sinead O'Connor's in there. The monkeys are in there.
Yeah.
He put. I mean, the Beatles are in there with the Pepper Gang, and it just almost became like a running joke with him and Mark, where he was just putting, even in the billboards, he started to put stuff, but he was just obsessive with that was his attention to detail. I think it was the human bomb with the pull my finger joke, what he did.
Yeah.
And the city of Chicago makes an appearance too. Yeah.
A lot of Chicago.
I will say this, however, the epilogue in Planet Krypton, that's basically my apartment. So for that, I just shot a bunch of reference in my own place and just sent him, here, this is the props you need in your place.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'm so sorry. We are all out of time.
I'm so sorry.
But I want to remind everybody, please sign up for the Legend of Kingdom Come Kickstarter. And also, a moment you've all been waiting for, we've got an exclusive poster for the documentary featuring art from Alex Ross for each of you. So please grab one of those on your way out. And thanks so much to our panel.
Thank you. Right, that was a lot of fun. Thank you so
Pleasure.
much.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it, guys.